Making memories with friends is highly important, creating lasting friendships that last the test of time. However, sometimes we may be creating relationships with people who might be toxic. This wastes our time, and it also can hurt us. In this video, I'm going to offer the 15 signs of how to understand if somebody is a friend or a foe, and if you're dealing with a toxic friend. Hi friends, Ashley Berges back. Glad that you're catching this video. On today's video, I'm going to be talking about the 15 signs of toxic friendships. How to know so that you don't waste the time on these toxic friendships, and also so that you don't get hurt. Okay, let's begin with those signs right now. I wanted to create this video because I think that a lot of people aren't necessarily hanging out with the right friends, the healthy friends. And when we're right in the middle of it, it's hard to see the toxicity sometimes. Most of the time because we really don't want to see it. We want them to be our friends so badly that we'll deal with anything. And so that's why I wanted to create this video, because I don't want you wasting your time, but more important, I just don't want you to get hurt. The first indication that you're dealing with a toxic friend is that they are jealous of you, okay? They're not happy for the things that you achieve. Let's say that you get an award for doing something amazing. What about getting a new car, right? You worked really hard for it, whatever. They're not showing you that they're happy for you, okay? They don't reach out, they don't message you, they don't call you, they don't pat you on the back. It seems that when you have something good happen to you, they're pretty much nowhere around. The second indication that you're dealing with a toxic friend is that they are critical of you. And usually them being critical is either random and without warning. So it's not consistent, right? Because if it was consistent, you would pretty much realize that this is not a friend of yours, okay? However, it usually comes quite random. And one telltale sign is that when you're telling them about your dreams and your hopes and your plans for the future, this can be where they start to criticize you. And because it's random, you might believe them. So you might tell them about a job idea that you have, or a business idea, or something you want to do, and they kind of poo-poo all over it. And because it's random, you kind of start believing that. So that's definitely something to think about when you're kind of analyzing your friendships, because even if a dream might seem kind of big and maybe almost unattainable, a friend is supposed to be there to say, you know, hey, I believe in you. I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot of work involved and there's a lot of, work to get there, but I believe that you can achieve it. A friend's supposed to be positive and that type of thing, not trying to find and nitpick everything and criticize you, especially when it comes to things that close to your heart. The third indication is that they talk behind your back. That's pretty self-explanatory. You tell them things about you that you want to be held in confidence, and they tell other people. And it can be hard to know what's really happening, but if you have a solid friendship group, at least some people, if that person's talking behind your back, somebody's going to probably come back and tell you about it, right? And so that's something you might not always have access information to, but definitely you want to keep your eyes and ears open. The fourth indication is that they lack empathy. And if you're dealing with a narcissistic type friend, they might not even really feel or think the fact that you have feelings. You see what I'm saying? So in those situations, if you're dealing with a tough time, if you're dealing with someone that might be a toxic friend, they're probably not going to express any help or sincerity. You might kind of feel like you're like the lone wolf in the situation. So when things aren't really going the best for you, they're probably not going to be around. The fifth indication is that they are super self-centered. It's all about them. Okay, and sometimes we don't really realize that because we usually give people the benefit of the doubt. And a lot of times I hear people talk about, well, but they had such a challenging life, or they've gone through so much, or, we make excuses, right, for the person to be so self-centered. And that's something that I want you to think about too, is remember, we create all these excuses to offset the problems in these relationships. Well, she's like that because she's dealt with this, or she's gone through this. When in reality, we kind of have to step back and say, well, is there really any room for me in this friendship? Okay, because a lot of times it's a one-way street. And when it is that way, it really is all about them. It's on their time schedule. It's when they can make it. It's when they can call you. And it's all based on them. And you kind of feel like out in left field because they don't respond to you when it's good for you. It seems like everything is always about them. So definitely something that you want to consider and think about, and kind of stop giving excuses when a person is acting that way. Another indication is that they're super inconsistent. It can be challenging to understand what side they're going to be on that day. Okay, so they're not consistent. They kind of flip-flop a lot, and you really don't know exactly where they stand. And it even becomes hard to understand what they're thinking or how they're feeling. And so it almost feels like a lot of emotional distance. Like you really don't know them that well, and you kind of just don't know what's going to happen next. The 7th indication is that they don't always tell you the truth. Okay? A good friend, a healthy friend, tells you the truth no matter what. Okay? And this is something that you want to think about, because if somebody is telling you lies and you're catching it, which most of us do, we just don't want to necessarily see it, you've got to kind of start going within and trying to figure out inventory on how you want to deal with this. Because if they're lying to you, they might be lying to themselves, sure, and then they're lying to you because they're lying to themselves, but you kind of got to step back and ask yourself, how much time do you want to spend with somebody who chooses to lie to you instead of to be honest with you? Because I think this is the pillar of the relationship. This is where we have trust. And if you can't trust somebody to be honest, I don't think you have much here. I think this is a toxic friendship that needs to probably be let go. The 8th indication is that you really can't share personal information with them. 2 things. It might get out because they might talk about you to other people, and you've kind of felt that way because they'll tell you things about other people that you really don't need to know. That's also personal business. And other times too, when you do share personal business, there's no emotional connection. They seem to not understand where you're coming from, and it feels like it's falling on deaf ears, like they're not even paying attention. And so when you're telling them personal information about you that you need some help with or a different perspective, they really don't have time for it. And so it's almost like, again, it's all about them. Okay, so definitely you don't want it being spread out to the world. And also you need somebody that actually cares enough to help you to be a sounding board. That's what a friendship is. The 9th indication is that they suck all the energy out of the room. They're complete energy suckers. They also could be quite negative as well. So you're dealing with someone where the world is revolving around them, but also it seems like everything they talk about for the most part is negative. They're bitching about something, they're angry about something. It's kind of just a negative beatdown where you begin to feel very heavy being around them, very burdened. And so you need to be aware of that, because when we're around that type of negativity, we don't realize that, it can kind of impress on us to also feel that way as well. And so being aware of that, you want to limit your exposure to that negative type energy, okay? Because life is hard enough to get through that we don't need to be around people that find fault in everything instead of finding solution. And so that's one of the biggest things. I want to be around people that find solution. I want to be around people that are in solution instead of just pointing out the problems and then wallowing in it and talking about it constantly. I don't have time for that. And when I'm around that, it kind of makes me feel like a little angry, because I feel like the conversation is being controlled by this person, but they don't want any solution. And when you try to provide solution that's applicable, they don't want to hear it. Okay, so they might make a joke or, you always find a solution for everything, but they're really not listening to you. So you got to hear this over and over again, but your contributions to the conversation really mean nothing to them. Another indication is that they are not reliable. You cannot rely on them. They might tell you they're going to do something, they might tell you they're going to be somewhere, but usually they're not. Okay, and this is something that you really want to think about, because you need to be able to depend on a friend. Okay, that's why we have friends. Otherwise, we don't need friends. So you need to be able to depend on them. They need to be able to depend on you too. So this is something that you want to think about and make sure that the friends that you keep and the people that you have closest to you are reliable and definitely honest. The 11th indication is that they really don't listen to you and they don't value your perspective. So when you offer suggestions or solutions, right, they really don't listen to it. They continue to have that conversation, but it seems like your contribution doesn't matter. And when you give your perspective on something, they don't see the value in it. So it's almost like they have to go talk to other people that might tell them the same thing, and then they'll agree to it. But do you see how that happens sometimes, where you can tell that friend something and they won't listen, and they'll be like, that's never going to work, it's not going to work, and another person can tell them the same thing, but they'll take it from that person, but they won't take it from you, okay? And that happens a lot of times in our own family, right? Where we tell a family member, we give them solution, but because we might be the youngest in the family, or because maybe we screwed up back in our teenage years, they sit there and they kind of look down on us. Even though we have the best, successful solution-based ideas, they still don't see the value. So if you're dealing with a friend like that, it's not worth it. You know what I'm saying? Your friend needs to value your perspective and respect you, right? And you need to respect them. But if they're going outside getting the same information and taking it from someone else, this shows you that they really don't respect you and they don't respect your perspective. The next indication is that you have to constantly reach out to them to keep in touch, because they're not going to do it. So it's really a one-way street. Definitely analyzing that is important. So if you're constantly reaching out, but they don't ever initiate the reach out or the text or the call, this is an indication that you're probably not on their mind, and they're probably not thinking of you that much. So that's also an indication of where you are in the level of friendship with them. Another indication is they just don't make time for you. And when you call them and ask them to do something, they tell you about how busy they are, or how sick they are, or what's happening, and they're planning out into the way future. You know, you're looking at, well, I can do something in 3 or 4 weeks, what have you. But then you look on Facebook, you look on Insta, and you see that they're out every single night with different people. Okay, this is an indication, unfortunately, that they're not very honest with you. They're not telling you, hey, I'm not really interested in this friendship. They're kind of just holding on to the friendship because they just want a lot of people to like them, but they're not really doing anything to move the friendship forward. And so if they're going out with all different people all the time, unfortunately, it just means that you're just not at the top of the list, and it might be more of an acquaintance than a friendship. The next indication is that they don't keep promises. Okay, so they might make big promises, and the next day they talk nothing about it. You might bring it up. They kind of manipulate out of the situation. And what happens here is that when we have empty promises, we kind of just get hurt. Because you get your hopes up. You're out one night, you're hanging out, they're talking about doing this and that, and y'all are going to go on this trip together, and you're going to go to wherever, and it's going to be so much fun, and we're going to plan it, and you get into it. You're like, this is awesome, this is going to be great. And then, a few days later, when you call to start making the plans, like, oh, I can't do that, I can't go. And it's like you just feel let down. And then you start questioning, is anything that they're saying to me real? When people keep making false promises, it's a big indication that they're not your true friend. And the last indication is that they can be big talkers, right? You can have some friends that are big talkers. They'll talk about all kinds of different stuff, but when push comes to shove, there is no follow through, okay? And that can be painful too, because, in order to really move relationships forward and to create prosperity and amazing stuff in our life, we have to do what we say we're going to do. And so if you're around somebody that doesn't do what they say they're going to do, that's another indication and red flag, because the actions speak louder than words. People can say anything to you and not follow through whatsoever. And I've found that I try to stay away from people like that. And I give them a chance. But after at least 1 or 2 chances, I'm out, because I realize, okay, it could have been a bad day. There could have been other, situations behind this situation. They might have had a good idea and really wanted to execute it, but they can't. And so I give people the benefit of the doubt. But after a couple of times when people are talking big and they're not following through, I don't want to be around that type of energy. Okay, I don't need to be around that type of energy. I'm a mover. I like to do things. I like to create stuff. And I really I really am honest about that. And I don't say things that I'm not going to do. I try to always be honest with my word and deed. And so you're looking for other folks that are honest with their word and deed. And that's definitely a sign of a good friend. And one last caveat that I want to bring up. A lot of times we don't really realize the level of friendship we're dealing with, okay? Some of these folks that you think are close friends might be more like an acquaintance, right? You really need to think about, who are your real friends? Okay, who are the ones that you can really depend on and they can depend on you? Who are the friends that you know everything about and they know everything about you, okay? Those are your real friends, and you can definitely make more of those friends, right? you can definitely make more of those friends. But some folks are kind of, you know, you see them out, you say hi, you have that connection, but there's not the depth there. And sometimes we can create the depth in that relationship, and other times we can't. So we need to be aware of these signs. And you know, not everything's a toxic friendship or a great friendship. Some things are just in the middle. Okay, some things are just in the middle. There's just not a lot of emotional connection. So we really need to be right with that as well, you know. And when we're picking friends, we need to realize that when we want something from them, like to be helpful and to be there for us and to be reliable and to keep their promises, we've got to do the same thing too, okay? We got to do the same thing. We can't expect somebody to do something for us that we're not willing to do for them. And this is a big deal. And so it's a two-way street. And so we have to be aware, do we have toxic friends? Are we a toxic friend? Are we a good friend? And think about that too, because that energy that we're sending out in the world, we're also getting back. I hope this video has helped you. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and give us a like on this video. Also, if there's any other signs of a toxic friendship that you would like to put out in the comment section, I would love to read those as well, because I know that I only came up with 15 signs. I know there's probably 100 and 200, 1,000, but definitely if you have some signs, put those out to help the community too. Don't forget, as you know, to live your true life.